Hi, I'm Janet Rankin, and I'm a professor down at Virginia Tech, just down the road, but I'm really here representing American College of Sports Medicine, one of the co-sponsors of this meeting here. And ACSM has really been about physical activity and trying to get people up off the couch. And we over the years have tweaked our recommendations, just how many minutes do you have to do, and we've improved that. And you know what? It's been pretty constant, the amount of people who are being physically active. So just that information is not getting through and making people change their behavior. So I've gotten very interested in the built environment and how important that is in getting people to be more active. So one of the things I'm very interested in is active transportation as a strategy to get people to be more active. And in the US, we're not using biking or walking for commuting. You know, about 3 or 4% of the commutes are active. There are countries where it's up to 50%. So I don't think we're ever going to get there, but certainly we could get better than 3%. So we need to work on making that more possible. Now, mostly because I was coming here, I started thinking more about how buildings can promote people being more physically active. So that's the lens I'm looking at. And in my travels this year, I picked up a newspaper, the LA Times, was a whole article about more private homes. People are asking architects to put in elevators for them so they don't have to walk up and down the stairs and get a little bit of activity. So that's just a small evidence of how people are trying to be more and more sedentary. And so we know that buildings have stairs, but oftentimes they're not accessible, they're not safe, they're locked, they're not well lit, so people are not able to easily use them, and we have research that supports that. So to me, the two primary barriers in improving both of those situations are access to safe and attractive infrastructure, so the built environment, and then also attitudes and habits. What is okay? And the one quick example I'll give is in December we had a meeting up here for walking promotion. And the hotel I was staying at, I had already Googled it. I knew it was only about a mile and a half to walk. I asked at the front desk to make sure I started in the right direction. She said, "Oh, no, you could never walk that far." I'm like, yes, I am. So it's in our culture that no, you don't walk. You use private car usually, elevator, etc. So I think we could use some attitude adjustment. So here's just some pictures of how we don't often have safe and attractive infrastructure. So no one's going to want to walk on that sidewalk there. Yeah, I like that. The bike. I'm a biker, so I had to put that bike lane in there. So and would you want to try to cross that road? So we make it very difficult for people to use active transportation or to be active throughout the day. So I think we need to come up with some new strategies other than just tweaking our recommendations a little bit more about how many minutes and what intensity. And I think this idea of co-benefits to help people be motivated to change funding, design, and use. So health is the most obvious one, and the one at American College of Sports Medicine we talk the most about. We have lots of evidence on physical activity and health. But economy, and I know some of the other speakers are going to talk about this. How does being physically active help our economy? And I'll talk a little bit about that. And finally, the environment. So these are co-benefits to using more active transportation, having a healthier building. So first on the health co-benefit, again, the easiest one. This is the most common, chronic diseases or non-communicable diseases, we're using that term, are the #1 cause of death worldwide. It's not just in developed nations anymore. We know physical activity can reduce most chronic diseases, the incidence and also treatment if someone has those. So we know physical activity can improve that. How do we get people to be more active? Partly through access. So whether it be a bike lane or you have stairs, trails, things like that. We know that, at least from cross-sectional studies, that places that have these infrastructure, people are more active. In buildings, if you make stairs obvious and safe, attractive, people do use them more. There's not as much longitudinal research, and this is one area I think we need more work on. A lot of those studies are cross-sectional. We need more intervention studies that actually show what changes are required to see the benefits and what are the priorities as far as the changes you need to make. But I did want to point out 2 studies that do show that active transportation does reduce risk of cardiovascular outcomes. And one study by Anderson, 40% lower mortality in regular cycle commuters. And that was European, so they were doing regular commuting with their cycle. So we do need more studies, but there is some now that we can point to. So switching to the economic issues, we know that the healthcare costs are astronomical and are going to cripple a lot of those developing nations that now have super high risk of diabetes and other chronic diseases. So I can make the argument at the personal level, how much it costs you to drive your car every year back and forth to work versus taking the bus or a bike or walking. But we can also make the argument for the community. We know that realtors want to brag about the walkability of a community when they're selling a house, makes it more attractive. It's good for businesses. The bike store I go to gives a 10% discount if you come up on your bike. There's also data on the population. A lot of this is modeling data, but this is an example that if you replace short car trips with bike just 50% of the time and use this heat tool, it estimates huge savings for the Midwestern cities that they modeled. And I like the quote that says the healthcare savings could cover the cost of adding bike lanes to every road in 1 to 10 years. So how about the third co-benefit, environment? And fossil fuels are finite. We're using them quickly. We think they're related to climate change. Well, the private vehicle is a huge contributor to both use of fossil fuels and contribution to CO2 in the environment. So if we can substitute active transportation to that, that helps our environment. So a couple just statements about that, estimates on how much impact we could have. If U.S. drivers made just 1 4-mile round trip per week on their bike instead of a car, they would save about 2 billion gallons of gas. And then another estimate of modest increase in walking and biking saves 28 million tons of CO2 from going into our atmosphere. So you can develop facts and statistics to help change behavior. So overall, we need some change in infrastructure, policies, and behavior, attitudes to change that behavior. And I just want to show a picture. You can find these online, but this is an example of a road here that doesn't look very attractive, and a building over there. You're not seeing many pedestrians, but artist mock-up of what it could look like. You can see the landscape architecture improvement, a little bit of paint, changing how the road is structured, having a little shelter, et cetera, and suddenly it becomes much more walkable. So there's a lot of things that we can do. So some policies are bigger, take a lot of effort, but they're complete streets policies, climate action plans, bike and pedestrian master plans that can be implemented and developed. But there are also small, more modest ways that you can do this, providing signage, encouraging public transportation use at a workplace through different incentives, having events like Bike to Work Day or Walk to Work Day, cluster commercial and residential buildings, moving parking further away. Some people aren't going to like that, but there's small little design things that can be done that can enhance physical activity and thus health. So overall, just trying to set the stage for what some of the other speakers are going to talk about, this co-benefit idea that health, the economy, and the environment can all be used to help change behavior. Thank you.